What's up, everyone? We're back with the Sports Biz Report, Season 2, Episode 14. Mike Proska here. Today I'm by myself, but we're going to do something interesting. We're going to talk about the SMTSU General Body Meeting, which took place tonight, actually. And tonight, we had our co-op confidential panel where 3 students who have been on multiple co-ops, talked about their experiences and gave some advice. And the reason I wanted to do this podcast off of that is there was a lot of, really good advice and something that any student, not just in sports, can really take and apply to their own internships in the future. So our first panelist was Brian Palmer. Brian's a senior, and his first co-op was with the Philadelphia Freedoms, the World Team Tennis, and he was in business development there, but he sort of had a hand in everything. And then secondly, his second co-op and last co-op was with Aramark in the sport and entertainment side. And he talks a lot about how he was at headquarters, but he talked a lot about how he had the opportunity to work on rights to acquire new stadiums like the Minnesota Vikings Stadium, the Chicago Bears Stadium. He was disappointed they couldn't get the new 49ers Stadium, but he had a lot of good experiences there. And though he mentioned that the work could be tedious and become sort of repetitive when you're at headquarters, it's worth it because you're going to learn a lot. So that was a really interesting take he had to start off. And our second panelist was Ryan Cutler, who is a junior and has completed 2 co-ops and is starting his third in about 2 weeks. And Ryan's first co-op was with the Hoop Group, which fortunately for me I actually have a little background with. I know a little bit about them, but they go around mostly on the East Coast, up and down the East Coast, and they run tournaments and camps and clinics for very serious high school basketball players and even sometimes down in grade school, in order to be recruited to learn new skills, but really to get recruited by, the top level Division I NCAA programs. And what Ryan did there was a lot of event registration, tournament registration, making sure just the backgrounds of any event, which is, making sure everything runs smoothly, working with the people who were in charge of dorms and the gyms. So he said he learned a lot from that, but it was his second co-op, which was in the PGA Tour. He worked the Barclays tournament in operations as well. And for that, he did everything. For people who are going to work events, you're going to have to know how to do a little bit of everything. He talked about, making sure buildings were all set. Catering was always where it needed to be at the right time. Very detail-oriented work and, long hours he mentioned, but he said, he learned a lot from that co-op and established, really good connections, and therefore they actually asked him to come back for his third and final co-op this year. And then finally, our third panelist is Micah Sokolowski. Micah has had some interesting experiences, to say the least. His first co-op was with the Camden River Sharks, which is right across the river here, in marketing and promotions. And needless to say, he also did a little bit of everything. Marketing promotions, so during office hours, he was doing market research, planning theme nights, and he liked this because he got to be creative and sort of, think out of the box. But also during games, he was on the field, dancing around. He even dressed up as the mascot for multiple games. So he talked about, you have to be ready to do anything, especially as an intern in a smaller minor league team. You never know what you're going to do, so you got to have every hat ready to put on. And then he also had a really interesting experience. He studied abroad in Spain, and he worked as an intern for Sport Networking Cooperation, which is a nonprofit. And what he mostly did was translations, of documents, presentations, and the website. But he mentioned the ability to get that experience in a different country, though it might not have given him, direct benefits for the sport going forward. But he learned a lot about himself and how other cultures operate, which was very important. And he seemed to really take that and now applies it to his current work, and I'm sure he will for his future work. So now that we went through all 3 of our panelists and talked about their different co-ops and their experiences. Each of them was asked to give their one piece of advice to students who are on co-op, and it seemed like two answers were repeating often. And that first one was to ask for more work. And Brian actually touched on this a little bit. When working for the Philadelphia Freedoms, the tournaments started in June and July, and he was in the office starting in April, so the work wasn't as much to do, and he didn't realize until about the beginning of May that he should be asking for more work, and then there was something to do. So lesson learned, ask for more work. Always ask to be doing something. Not only will you help the business, but it's going to make you stand out compared to your peers and your other interns. And then the second piece of advice was to not let them forget you when you leave or when you're done your position. And sort of this goes off as the same thing as asking for more work. Stand out. Be the best you can be and the best there. And people are going to appreciate when you ask for more work, when you go above and beyond. They're going to remember that, and they're going to remember your name when a future job opens up. So that was a really good piece of advice that they offered. And then finally, Ryan Cutler, he said, do everything you do with a smile. Even if you're taking out the trash, do it with a smile. Always be ready, always be happy to be there, because the sad truth, especially in sports, is you are replaceable. So many people want to get into the sport industry. They can hire another intern if they don't like what you're doing. So always do it with a smile, whether you're on your 10th hour of a long day or your 14th hour of a long weekend. Do it with a smile. If you're suiting up as a mascot or if you're taking out the trash, always be happy to be there and let them know that you are, your supervisors. So last thing I want to touch on about tonight is what these students learned about sort of the job search process, which is something I think a lot of times we take for granted at Drexel, is that we're getting this experience in searching for jobs at an earlier age than most people, and we really should be taking advantage of it. So Micah mentioned that, when you're on the co-op process, you might have multiple interviews. Take advantage of that. Maybe one interview is not going to go so well, but you can learn from it and apply it to your next interview. And I think that was something that I actually was able to do in my co-op search, but I didn't realize that until he sort of laid it out in words for me. So definitely, learn from your interviews, because this is something you're going to be doing your whole life. You're always going to be interviewing for jobs. So definitely something to remember while you're interviewing and while you're going through this process. And then secondly, both Brian and Ryan stressed the fact to do not limit yourself to certain jobs that are only in the Drexel system or jobs that you can't find per se. If you really want to do something, reach out to someone. They might know someone, or just give someone a call. Find out who the hiring manager is and give them a call. And, maybe you're not going to get it, but you got 3 co-ops. If you can make yourself stand out and be persistent, there's always a chance. And if it doesn't work out, you're going to learn from that experience. So, you heard it here. In case you didn't come out to the meeting or you couldn't make it, a lot of good advice tonight about making the most of your co-ops, learning from your co-ops, not only what you like to do or what you don't like to do, and, learning from the system of searching for a job. A lot of great advice. So that's going to wrap it up for this week. Hopefully, you took something out of this podcast, and hopefully you can apply it to your job search and your co-ops. We're done the spring term here, and we're going to take a week off next week, but we'll be back starting in April for episode 1 of spring term. Thanks, guys.